Hi everyone, it's meteorologist Brian Bennett with the latest update on Nicole. Starting off with a live view from Cocoa Beach, you can see that we have some large waves. The water level is rising as well. We'll continue to see the surf get higher and those waves get bigger as we move into the evening hours as that storm approaches the coast of Florida. Hopping over to the Gulf Coast, actually looking pretty nice right now, kind of like bathwater. The waves aren't big, the water level's not high. That will change though when those winds shift direction by late Wednesday night and Thursday morning. We could see those winds breaking right about here, closer to these dunes as we head towards late Wednesday night and Thursday morning. Right now, the storm has winds of 70 miles per hour. The hurricane center has it making landfall somewhere right around Port St. Lucie and then moving perhaps just north of Tampa and then making that turn off to the northeast, bringing some soaking rain to the Appalachians. Big old wind field right now representing a large area that has tropical storm force winds, and even though you may not be near that center of circulation, you're going to feel some type of impact from this very large storm as it moves onshore. Again, the Hurricane Center does think it'll make landfall right around Port St. Lucie. There is some wiggle room there in the cone of uncertainty, and again, this being a large storm, you'll feel those impacts well outside of the actual center of circulation. The storm moves up towards Lakeland and then scrapes parts of the Big Bend before turning off to the north. Likely it's going to be just north of Tampa and just south of Orlando as far as that center and lowest barometric pressure goes. The spaghetti models you can see right here. All the models are on the same page. We're looking at landfall right around Port St. Lucie, just north of Tampa, curving to the northeast, bringing soaking rain to much of the eastern half of the country. Right now, the winds are gusting 35 miles per hour in Jacksonville, 37 miles per hour in Tampa. Where will we see sustained tropical storm force winds blowing 39 miles per hour or greater? Mainly in this purple color here, which includes the east coast of Florida, all the way over towards Polk County, all the way up to Daytona Beach, and all the way down to West Palm Beach. Miami and Tampa downtown, unlikely to have sustained winds of 39 miles per hour, and obviously the same thing goes for the Panhandle as well, the strongest winds being right here in this purplish color. Large waves right now in the orangish color here, representing waves that are toppling around 25 feet just north of the Bahamas. As the storm progresses towards the coast of Florida, we'll continue to see those very large waves crashing ashore, especially around Cocoa Beach and that area. The satellite picture right now showing a fairly healthy looking storm. We are in training a bit of dry air on the southern half of the storm, and that could be limiting the development just a little bit for this storm. It does have winds of 70 miles per hour. You need 74 mile per hour winds in order to have a hurricane, so only 4 more miles per hour. And the Hurricane Center is out there with the Hurricane Reconnaissance aircraft trying really hard to try to find that extra 4 miles per hour. But right now, the strongest wind they can find, flight level, is right around 58 knots or so, and that is not considered to be hurricane force winds. So kind of unlikely in the afternoon update that we'll see this become a hurricane. Still a possibility later today, but just something we'll monitor. Either way, we're looking at winds in that 65 to 75 mile per hour range, which really won't change the impacts a whole lot. Here's a look at the future radar. And you can see the storm center moves onshore right around midnight. Here we are at midnight, fast forwarding to about 7 o'clock in the morning. So the morning commute, we are looking at some heavy rain occurring for much of Tampa Bay, downtown Tampa, Clearwater, down through Bradenton, over towards Orlando, looking at heavy rain as well from the storm. And then by here we are kind of midday. This is right around 1 o'clock, and you can see the center of the storm is moving offshore, and the rain could actually start to chill out a little bit, but then we start to see that counterclockwise wind, that onshore fetch, which could actually bring those onshore winds could actually bring the storm surge on the back side of the storm. After the rain starts to actually quiet down a bit, we get those westerly winds, and we could get a bit of a storm surge risk and inundation into your more prone locations by Thursday morning and even early Thursday afternoon before the storm really starts to move out of the area, other than these lingering little outer rain bands that kind of try to train over our location as we linger into Friday. Let's take a look at the rainfall totals. In general, everybody here in the red could see 1 to 3 inches of rain, and that includes Tampa, Orlando, down to West Palm Beach, up to Jacksonville. Looking at the possibility for 1 to 3 inches of rain. Some spots near the center of the storm could see perhaps 4 or 5 inches of rain. Definitely a possibility, which is a lot of rain in what is typically the driest month in Florida. What about those winds, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I'm going to show you. And you can see right about midnight, we're looking at sustained winds blowing 65 to 75 miles per hour along the immediate eastern coastline of Florida. Fast forwarding to right around 8 o'clock in the morning, and you can see the center part of the state not really looking at the strongest winds. Winds sustained right around 25, 30, maybe 35 miles per hour. So maybe a few little branches down and maybe a really weak tree as well, but shouldn't see that many power outages or even that much wind concern for the center part of the state away from the beaches. Again, a different scenario, though, as you're closer to the beaches, especially when you factor in that storm surge risk as well. Here we are by Thursday late morning, early afternoon. The winds are changing direction for Tampa Bay, but the wind's really not picking up too much. I would say winds for St. Petersburg and downtown Tampa, you're looking at sustained winds between 25 and 30 miles per hour Thursday morning, gusting to about 45 to 50 miles per hour. A possibility, especially if you're near the area beaches. Once you get away from the beach, those winds are going to slow down considerably as you have the friction from the trees and the buildings, etc. Storm moves off to the northeast and weakens, does not re-intensify even though it's trying to dip into the Gulf of Mexico. We don't see any re-intensification of the storm. It will continue to weaken. Big old waves expected off the coast of Florida, as we're already seeing, in fact. And then those waves start to pick up on the Gulf Coast as well. You see the red color here representing some offshore waves approaching about 20 to 25 feet west of the Tampa Bay area, especially once those winds turn and blow towards the coastline, which is going to exacerbate the red tide that's already kind of looming out there as well. And we'll take a look at that in a second as well. Here's a quick look at the tornado possibility. Front right quadrant is where you see the greatest chance for a tornado developing, and that looks to be north of Lakeland, so mainly northern Florida, and the purplish and bluish color here is where you would expect the greatest chance of a usually weak, somewhat quick tornado that could drop down out of the rain bands wrapping around the storm. Tampa, St. Petersburg, Sarasota, down to Fort Myers, not really looking at much of a tornado threat. Obviously stay tuned, but right now it doesn't look like that big of a risk for the Tampa Bay area. Here's a quick look at the storm surge possibility. 2 to 4 feet, possibly 3 to 5 feet, and the yellow color here near where the storm will be making landfall. 3 to 5 feet possible in the Big Bend as well. 1 to 3 feet possible in the western central Tampa Bay area. Cool looking graphic here. This is provided by the Hurricane Center, and I'll include the link to this inundation graphic in the comments, but it's a great graphic that shows you how much inundation you can expect in your area, and this way you can zoom down. In fact, you know what? I'll go ahead and show you how to get to it. So you go to the Hurricane Center webpage, and you click on this storm surge inundation graphic, which I've done there. Click continue, and then you can zoom into your area of interest. And you can see, for example, Anna Maria Island here, expecting the yellow color here. Yellow means 3 feet of inundation on what is typically dry land, so that water level will rise 3 feet on to the area beaches, and maybe even a bit of the inland area could see a slight bit of inundation as well. Egmont Key, same thing. Fort DeSoto, head up to Paso Grill, and the typical spots right there in Paso Grill could see a bit of inundation as well. Some of this does depend on the tides, which I'll peek at here in just a second, and how much the tide is fluctuating. Also really depends on the wind direction as well. Here's a zoomed in view of Tampa Bay. We're starting off with northerly winds, but by Thursday morning, we're seeing those winds shift to a westerly wind, which will bring that onshore wind, which will bring us a brief window where we could see storm surge risk on the west coast of Florida. And also it's going to bring the red tide mess ashore as well, so some dead fish possible, especially south of Tampa with that onshore wind. So again, it's all about that wind direction. Again, starting off the storm, Tampa Bay, no storm surge risk. Ending the storm Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon is where we're looking at that storm surge risk with the onshore flow. The tides. So in the Tampa Bay area, the strongest winds blowing onshore will happen in the early morning hours of your Thursday. That happens to be when tides will be the lowest. So some good news there. We're looking at lower tides happening when the stronger onshore fetch is occurring. So that will reduce the impact of storm surge in the Tampa Bay area. Now, Cedar Key, that's what we're looking at right now, the tide levels. The strongest winds will be happening right around 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's when we're looking at the highest tide as well. So a big tide and strong wind combination there, which could lead to a greater storm surge risk for parts of Cedar Key and parts of the Big Bend. I wanted to wrap up the video by looking at red tide, and where you see the red color is where we have the current red tide bloom, which where you see red, that means the fish could be dead. And with this onshore flow we're expecting by Wednesday night and Thursday morning, it could make red tide conditions worse for much of the Gulf Coast area, including Sarasota, Manatee, and parts of Lee County as well. Looking at the current reports from the Florida Fish and Wildlife, you can see that we're getting the red dots here representing high levels of Crania brevis or red tide, right just west of Port Charlotte, right around Boca Grande and up through Inglewood, representing likely dead fish washing ashore. Don't be surprised if you see more red dots after the storm, as we see that onshore fetch bringing the Crania brevis and the red tide to areas along the coast and possibly farther north. Anywhere from Sarasota County and Manatee County down through Sanibel could see worsening red tide conditions once the storm moves out of our area. All right, that's it for now. Hopefully that was informational for you. Everybody stay safe, and I'll have another update later this evening.